into it with the music as well. Please tell me if your audio levels are fine. I haven't done this in a while. We did a lot of side quests in 8. Final Fantasy VIII. Again, I just finished it like last stream after almost a year of streaming it. So let's give it a quick little unscripted review with a spoiler warning at the very beginning. I will talk about spoilers in this review, and since it's unscripted, it's basically just me rambling for half an hour. There might be spoilers like at the very beginning because while I'm talking about something, I will just veer into it. I don't know. Spoiler warning. Final Fantasy VIII is the second PlayStation 1 game. The second PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy game. At least in the mainline. I don't exactly know when Tactics released. It came out in 1999, 2 years after Final Fantasy VII, that pretty much even at the time was seen as a very big deal in branching out and expanding the world of like turn-based JRPGs in multiple ways. Storytelling, character development. It of course had to translate the games from a 2D space into a 3D space, as was very custom, like happening a lot back then with the jump to 3D for a lot of series. And also it got a lot of praise for its cutscenes. So Final Fantasy VIII had to follow up on that. And something that I always admire when a game has to follow a very popular predecessor is when the developers take a lot of risks. And Final Fantasy VIII definitely took a lot of risks. So, music may be slightly quieter. We can do that. This is a pretty intense piece of music for the beginning. But yeah, Final Fantasy VIII made some like really interesting design decisions. I played this game very shortly as a child. I talked about this a couple of times now. I had a friend who had a PlayStation and I had an N64, and we swapped consoles a few times for a few weeks when we wanted to play games that the other one had. And I borrowed it for Final Fantasy VII. I played a lot of Final Fantasy VII and liked it. And when 8 came out, or at least when he got 8, it must have been a little bit later, he told me about it and I wanted to play it. And I think I played like one session of it when I was like 10 or 11. And I did not like it as a kid. I can't really remember. It's been so long. But I think it was the first time that you're introduced to the junction system. Also, the game starts like way slower than 7, so maybe that also threw me off. But after that, for like more than 10 years, I did not play a singular Final Fantasy game because as a child, I just remembered being really disappointed with 8. So now, going back into it, I didn't really have any like knowledge about the game. I didn't even remember the junction system or the beginning. I only knew like a few of the characters from online discourse, and I did know that it's kind of polarizing, but it has its very loyal fan base. Like, I think there is a good chunk of people, not the majority, but a good chunk of people that say this is one of their favorite Final Fantasies or even their favorite Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VIII has a very different vibe than, like, it feels natural to compare it to 7. So it has a very different vibe than 7. 7 starts immediately into a sabotage mission. Midgar is really gritty, cyberpunky, dystopian. Even the outside world is bleak and like kind of muddy in a lot of places. You have this feeling of dread the entire time following Sephiroth. Yeah, well, why did the only Final Fantasy game you played, why was it 2? Can't recommend that. Final Fantasy VIII in comparison to 7, I once during a stream said that I was getting recommendations for a YouTube video called Why Final Fantasy VIII Feels So Cozy, and I finally watched it. I wanted to wait until I was done playing it. I sadly forgot the channel it's from. I'm so very sorry that I forgot the name. But they made a few really good points. Pretty much that the world itself is pretty advanced. And even though there is conflict in Final Fantasy VIII, it's, for the most part, a relatively lush world that has like trade and cooperations. A lot of places are pretty technologically advanced, even before you get to Estar. And the majority of it, even throughout the entire game, is pretty peaceful. You even have like a working train system. You have like inter-settlement infrastructure. That's a stark contrast to 7 or just in general a lot of other JRPGs. Even the ones that have like a more like technology-focused setting. It's funny though that when it comes to the graphics, things definitely changed. And it's just kind of funny, the juxtaposition of 7 having this really like gritty dystopian setting for the most part, while your characters in the overworld are just insanely cute, like chibified versions of the character running through this destroyed, muddy, rusty city and landscape. You know that I wait with trivia requests after reviews. And on the other hand, in this like more peaceful, more lush, more vibrant world of Final Fantasy VIII, you have kinda the more realistic characters. They're all insanely lanky and have like their legs are like 70% of their body, but they're not super chibified, and they do look more like actual people outside of combat. And I did talk about that with Final Fantasy VI as well. Final Fantasy VI did something for the first time that 7 went back on, and 8 now does again. And it's a little thing, but I think it's important. Final Fantasy VI is the first game where the overworld sprite and the combat sprite, the in-combat sprite, is the same sprite. And I think it gives just that little tiny bit more immersion. It breaks down the like very gameplay-y world and border of like, you have this section and then hard cut and then you're in this section, like overworld and combat. Final Fantasy VII went back on that because you have these like chibified low poly characters in the overworld, and then you have more realistic looking characters in combat. Now 8 again, which I really like, the characters in combat, they are the same models as they are out of combat. That's something that I really like. Also, graphics-wise, what I really, really liked about 8, I mean, we have wonderful backgrounds. 7 also had that. A lot of interesting angles for the fixed camera. 7 also had that. But what I don't think 7 had, at least I don't remember it, is that you have pre-rendered cutscenes moving in the background while you still have your in-engine characters movable by yourself. A lot of the time you have really fluent transitions between the pre-rendered cutscenes into actual gameplay. Yeah, the fighting music. And even sometimes they overlap, which I was caught off guard on the first time it happened. It's a really cool effect, and I think it's one of the most impressive things this game has going for it. It also had a cactus. Oh, Davey, you haven't heard about the organ yet. The organ is the new cactus. Sound and music-wise, I mean, Nobuo Uematsu's soundtrack is always just amazing. And this one, just the same. I can understand that a lot of people cover songs and tracks from this soundtrack. It has one of the best themes that I've heard yet in the series, and I do like a lot of Final Fantasy soundtracks from the games we've played so far. But man, there are a lot of varied locales in this game with very different styles of music to match. I mean, we even go to freaking space. That's not a first in the series, but it is a first. Like, we didn't go to space in 7. We went to orbit, but we didn't go like to the moon. Oh, did we? Man, it's been a while. We played Final Fantasy VIII for almost a year. With like fantastic music to boot. Something that this game does for the first time in the series is it has a few tracks that include lyrics. Like a singer performing a song with English lyrics. That just are so great for getting copyright claimed on YouTube, but that's not the game's fault necessarily. I'm always kind of on the fence when games use lyrics to heighten emotions. It can hit or it can miss. I think in this game, it hits more than it misses. There was some really nice... Oh my god, the I'm not a bot thing. I haven't seen that in a long time. There were some really cool musical callbacks that I called out during gameplay. I really enjoyed during part of the final fight when we finally got to hear the classic Final Fantasy combat bassline. The do 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 do. That caught me off guard, and I did enjoy that a lot. I feel like the biggest things about Final Fantasy VIII, though, are gameplay and story. And especially gameplay is where this game made all of its... how do I say it? Provocative design decisions. The main things that this game does different, and I feel like it's the game that plays the most different from the other 7 that come before it, apart from 2. While you do level in this game, your level doesn't matter that much because a lot of the enemies scale. It's really important, and it really changes the dynamic of the gameplay, primarily by making grinding way less effective. And also, you have no equipment except for your weapon that you can upgrade. You have junctioning. Junctioning, and thus the magic system and the equipment system, are entirely different than anything that the series had before. And this is, I think, the most polarizing aspect of the game. Whether you like or dislike Final Fantasy VIII probably more or less solely hinges on the fact whether you like the junction system or you dislike it. You get spells by drawing them from enemies. Each enemy has a unique spell list, like usually 3, and you junction them to different character stats to increase them. You also get these Guardian Forces, which is pretty much just espers, that level and that unlock your abilities that you can junction magic to. So eventually you can like have almost any character stat junctionable and put magic on. And different magic gives different bonuses for different stats. So you pretty much build your characters almost from the ground up. And it leads to an interesting dynamic, in theory at least, where magic is your equipment. So if you use magic in combat or out of combat, your stats decrease. I say in theory because in practice, that was never an issue. For the most part of the game, magic is, except for like healing magic, is entirely useless in combat. Until at the very end, where it still wasn't an issue, because even when you use a lot of magic spells, you're still like high level enough and have enough other things junctioned that a few spells don't make a difference, that big of a difference at least. But in theory, it's a really cool concept. I said that that junction, whether you like the junction system or not, is the main reason whether you like Final Fantasy VIII or not. So where do I land on that spectrum? I kind of went through some phases with the junction system. At first, I found it really interesting, the concept, and I was really looking forward to see where it goes. And then eventually, I found it very tedious because it led to me just, when I encountered an enemy that had good spells to draw, I just stayed in that combat and tried to get all of the magic I could, which is not really exciting. I mean, obviously you don't have to do it, but it kind of invites you to do that because you get a real tangible reward for drawing lots of good magic. And also it was, for the most part, not really necessary for me to pay any real attention to what I had to junction. For the most part, I did the auto-junction system. It was only until the very end, like the end of Disc 3, when we started doing all of the optional things, that I had to manually pay attention to GF abilities and junctions. And that was a hell of a curve that could have been way smoother, and I think that the game would have benefited a lot from having like a smoother but more steady difficulty curve, especially when it comes to its gameplay systems. At the very end, I think that junctioning is a cool idea with quite a few flaws. Like, as I said, it's kind of weird that you don't have equipment. That also means that for some things, you don't really get a real tangible reward. Where you would get, especially for optional things, where you would get good equipment in other Final Fantasies or other games in general. We will get to the card game, don't you worry. Here you don't really get anything, except for maybe Guardian Forces, but once you have all of those, there's not really any like tangible reward. You also don't get money from fights. You get money by like running around and getting paid, which I think is kind of fine. That's a cool system. It wasn't as so impactful that it was a meaningful change to me, I feel like. But yeah, I think the junction system, it gets from me a like 7 out of 10. Good ideas. A good idea needs some work. But I think also because it's this specific game's specific thing that makes it unique, and that does give it more character. Like, if more games used this system afterwards, I think the flaws would come more to the forefront and it would lose quite a bit of its charm. Yeah, Triple Triad. Once I understood how to play it, I really enjoyed Triple Triad. I'm huge on like these optional games that you can play in video games. I also really liked the card game in Knights of the Old Republic. I really loved the the like clockwork chess. I forgot what it's called in my god, what is it called? Sea of Stars. I really enjoyed that one. And the game immediately killed it for me by introducing the random rule at some point that I couldn't get rid of, and I didn't have any intention to go back and play the card game. That sucked. I was really enjoying it up to that point. But yeah, I guess once you know what to do, you can kind of avoid that. And I could have gotten way better cards and could have gotten more out of the cards. I kind of read up on it afterwards. But this game also does something that's kind of annoying by just handing you a lot of text tutorials, pretty much telling, hey, you're in school. These are the PCs where you can read up on everything. Just read up on it. Which is a very old school and a very terrible way to introduce your mechanics. But it's fine. I mean, we got through the game without. So yeah, I do enjoy Triple Triad. And I do enjoy, generally, the gameplay of this Final Fantasy. Is it my favorite gameplay-wise? Absolutely not. But it's intriguing. Definitely. I think another big contentious thing about this game for a lot of people is the character roster, especially also, again, compared to Final Fantasy VII, which had an amazing roster. Pretty much every single character in that game is fantastic. Every single party member is interesting and unique and gets their moment to shine. That's not really the case in Final Fantasy VIII. There are some standout characters, for me at least. But, and I'm sorry to all the Squall stands out there. I know he gets a lot of hate, and I dislike being like piling onto the dude. But for the most part, I also really disliked him. He is moody in an uninteresting way throughout like 70% of the game. He does have some growth, which is nice. And by the end, I did like him more. But compare him to Cloud, who is also a very like brooding character. And Cloud has so much character development. I think part of the issue is that a lot of the conflict from Squall and characterization comes from his inner monologue that the other characters can't react to because it's his inner monologue. That makes it inherently less dynamic, and that does make him inherently less interesting to me. The design's cool though, I have to say. But yeah, again, some standout characters. For me, Zell. Zell's pretty much not that interesting. Thank you so much for dropping by, Davey. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and see you soon, ne? Zell's, like, to be realistic, Zell's not that interesting, but he's just the kind of, like, stereotypical himbo character that I really enjoy. Again, I said it before, he's like Ryuji. He's like, what's he called? Frank in Neo, The World Ends With You. I just enjoy those kind of characters, so I enjoyed Zell. Rinoa is a really cool character. Right up there, I feel like, with Tifa and Aerith, with for really interesting female lead, or at least like assisting lead characters. In general, Final Fantasy, the last 3 Final Fantasies, 6, 7, and 8 had really strong female characters. I like that. I really like that. Rinoa was a cool character. And of course, my absolute favorite character in the entire game was Laguna. And I was so happy when we finally got to meet him. And I do enjoy the parts with Laguna way more. And I get that, yeah, the more upbeat Laguna is also supposed to be a juxtaposition to the more broody Squall. But I really wish that we had more time with Laguna. The dichotomy of switching between these very different characters, split through time, was by far the most interesting part of the game for me. And it ended kinda early on, and I felt like it was underutilized. It could have gotten on way longer, and it would have been more interesting. Like, I think for the first 2 discs, maybe we had like 15% or 20% Laguna and his party, and compared to Squall and his party. And I would have liked it more if it went on longer, like maybe until the end of disc 3, and maybe until we meet Laguna, or maybe until we go to space. That would have been a good cutoff point, I think. And would have been more like 35 to 65%. I just wanted more Laguna. He's my favorite character. The story in this game is another big part, obviously, and the story, I think, is this game's strongest point. The story is just interesting and turns and turns and turns from the very beginning. Well, not the very, very beginning, but like once you go to Timber, up until the very end. It has twists with the multiple sorceresses. It has freaking time travel, but it introduces it in a clever way early enough with the Laguna flashbacks. And also then the time compression thing, yeah, that's a little like overcomplicated sci-fi bullshit, but it's actually a really cool concept. With the sorcerers from the far future needing to go back in time to get more power. I thought that was cool. And just a lot of the moments in the story really hit. And you have definitely like an escalation phase. Like the first escalation is the attempted assassination, which is a cool set piece. Then later on you have the whole missile crisis. I can't call it anything else. It's pretty much just, it's a missile crisis. And then you have where I really felt connected with the like entire cast for the first time was when they all figured out that except for Noah, they grew up in the same orphanage. That's just, again, the story really is cool, culminating in the space scene with Renoa floating in open space and Squall going for her, where they really take their time to make you guess whether or not Renoa had died. I mean, think back to like 1999. Final Fantasy VII came out 2 years earlier and killed off a main party member that was integral to the story and that was in your party for quite a long time. And that was built up to be the, like, next to Cloud, the lead character, and they killed her off. So when they really took their time, and you knew that from Final Fantasy VII, that they do kill characters, you definitely guessed. You weren't sure if they killed Renoa, and that hit. That was a cool moment. A really, really cool moment. And with the send-off at the end, again, like I said when we watched it, Laguna at the very end, the last part of the cutscene before the credits roll belongs to Laguna, as it should. Yeah, it tied up neatly. Story, best part of the game. Probably the second best story so far. I think 6 is still stronger. But I think it's on par with 7. Yeah, definitely strong. Yeah. Story ranking. I can't do all the rankings. But as a, like, closing out the review, because it's already going half an hour. I think for me, this game was a lot of fun. Definitely, like, after the experiences I had with it like 25 years ago as a child that made me stop playing Final Fantasy games entirely for like 12 years. Way more fun than I had anticipated. It's not my top Final Fantasy. It's not even in the top 3. But it's really good. I think it's like a solid 8 out of 10 Final Fantasy game for me. Like 7.5 out of 10. I can see myself going back to it and enjoying it, which is something that I can't say for like 2 or 4. So, and I think, well, not just think, I do, because of the story and the like technical advantages and how it uses the graphic capabilities with the cutscenes especially, I do prefer it over 1, which is a game I really enjoy. But I'm pretty sure I like 7 still more. I like 3, 6, and 5 still more. But Final Fantasy VIII is a really, really good game. And I'm really glad that we played it, and I'm really glad that we took our sweet time with it, even though it was a little long, with almost a year. Oh, perfect. Music fade out.